And for the first panel, I'd like to introduce Parrish Gunnels, who's here, going to moderate our peaceful and passionate Parrish. So he's going to introduce his panel and discussion on practical automation strategy.
Thank you very much. So let me introduce everyone on the panel. So Eric, I don't know if I saw you. Oh, there you are. I didn't see you.
You didn't see me scoot on by?
Sorry, I missed that. Atira? Atira, sorry, I knew I was going to screw that up.
Yeah.
I'm so bad with names. Barely can say my own name. James Kasle and
Jim, please, thank you.
Yeah, Jim.
Thank you for being here.
So why don't we just pass the mic? You guys just do a little intro of who you are, where you let's go from there.
Greetings and welcome. This is Eric Yancy.
I got really worried.
No, Eric Yancy. I'm the Information Security Officer with the City of Denton, a small little place.
I'm Andrew Forgie. I'm a regional director with Armis. We're sponsoring the panel. Prior to Armis, I've been here about 3 years. I was with FireEye Mandia for 6.5 years. Prior to that, worked at WebSense, which now ForcePoint ran the data security practice for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Kasle. I'm the CISO at Kimberly Clark. Been there about 2.5 years. Previously, a number of other industry verticals as the CISO. Started my career in the U.S. Navy's intelligence. And Eric, I'm curious, when you think of top of the tasks, we were just talking about it.
Oh, I got you. It's all done.
Are you okay?
Hi, my name is Atira. I'm with Kasle Financial Services. I'm a BISO there. Been there for like 2 years. Before that, I was with Cisco Systems as a principal architect for cybersecurity. Have done Windows administration, server administration, and now in cybersecurity. So loving it.
All right, and again, Parrish Gunnels. I'm a CISO at a bank called Sunflower Bank. So we're actually headquartered in Denver. Okay, so our topic is obviously automation. So let's kind of just start with what the definition of that means, right? Because it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So, Jim, since you got the microphone, you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I would say definition of automation. I would put it in perspective of, when I think of automation, I think of the opportunity.
Could you put the microphone?
Yep, sure. How's that? Is that better? I think about the opportunity to, I would say, efficiency and effectiveness, reliability, get rid of the mundane, the monotonous, and I view automation. We use this phrase in the military. It's called a force multiplier. If I can use automation and reduce the effort of 1 or 2 SOC analysts as an example, huge win. That's what I think of when I think of automation.
Anybody else? You can jump in? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking automation and you're trying to kind of translate it into what's the value back to the business, this is an interesting microphone for us. We'll work with it. I think it kind of comes down to 3 things, right? How's it helping me avoid cost, reduce or manage risk, or improve the operational efficiency of our people, process, and technologies? Mainly, we see these things kind of going from manual to automated.
I just want to add 2 other things. One, consistency and integrity. So when you have automation and the scripts are correct, the human error is eliminated, or you make really bad errors at scale. and the other thing is actually as a security control. So if you're doing a change management and you have the ability to have a SQL script or a PowerShell script that you can look at prior to, and that script is what does the change, not the person. So we also have to understand how automation can be used to reduce your risk.
Yeah, I also agree with the same. It's like scalability, reliability, error, lack of errors actually, because we make a lot of errors when we do like manual processes, right? And then I would also say cybersecurity, because we don't have people in cybersecurity, right? So we just have to see what we can automate within cybersecurity, like probably patching, or like server automation of the servers, where we see that particularly user access reviews and identity access management. So many areas where we can use automation, and we are currently using, right, where we had I think 6 contractors which were doing user access reviews, which we don't have any right now because we are using automation. So I would say that's a great value add.
Okay, great. So mainly, if I sum it up, it's making our lives easier, right?
Yeah.
Somehow, and redirecting resources. So how do you come up with that, right? So what do you target? How do you come up with, are you looking at people that are coming in and doing assessments, or is it just inherently what makes my life easier to run my program? Kind of like to hear some ideas of what drives that automation or going towards an automation type thing. Okay, jump in, anybody add this? Yep.
You guys are the door handle.
I would say when you think of ideas of automation, any repetitive task or anything that's manual data entry, data transfer, or anything that's related to, as I said, process which can be improved, or repetitive tasks which can be improved. So one of the things that we have done in our organization is, because when we say automation, everybody is not aware what automation is, right? So we did like a workshop throughout the organization to identify areas where people could come in and say their problems. So, and we say, hey, how we can do automation in those processes. And we also had like specific office hours where we can say, hey, this is a use case. Can we do this in an automated way? So we had a lot of places where like we had mundane tasks where people were not aware that could be automated, which helped understand that, okay, these are the processes which can be done with automation.
So I'm just curious, because you made a comment here about how the organization really went through and looked at it. So just to kind of get everyone a little warmed up here. So by show of hands, have any other organizations really taken that task on where they've actually talked about automation as a major project initiative? Okay, well, that's good. Okay, awesome, that's good. All right, great. All right.
Well, so another point that in this automation, I have this like theory that if an email thread goes back and forth more than 3 times, get in a room and knock it off. And I think we take that same mentality into the automation. If I look at my analysts and say, this individual is doing, rote, mundane things over and over again, in my opinion, of course, it's a significant lift to remove somebody from doing an execution of operations to invest the time to program the automation and or outsource it. So there's this upfront loaded debt that is very difficult to budget for and or convince management should happen because your metrics are still in line. Now, I don't know, does everybody else have that problem where it needs automated, you want to automate it, but not being able to execute because of 1, you're already overworked, 2, budgetary constraints? Mike, you have anyone here?
Yeah.
Run it solo!
Mic drop.
So I'm in a position where a lot of my conversations again will be working with existing companies today, and I always want to understand kind of what are you doing today. We generally come around the idea of context. There's this common thing that gets set out into the market. Hey, there's this unfilled need for cybersecurity positions. There's like 3.2 million jobs that are out there and available from what you hear. Do we have a cybersecurity or lack of expertise that's out in there in the environment, or do we really have a confidence problem? Do you have all the context that you need to actually go out and do the automation? When I think about people who are sitting in the stock, people who are doing the analysts, you've got the playbook, you can create the playbook, but generally it's either an MSSP or something that's showing up in that SIM that doesn't show people exactly what do I go out here and automate. Because if I automate and I break something, I stop something, and I interrupt business, then that's going to have an impact on us. So people are stopping to do investigations. And not only are they stopping to do it, but they're stopping somebody else from doing what they're doing to get them to come help them to understand, hey, what is this asset? What is this device? We need to get some more details around it.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Eric and my friend here just said. So we insourced our SOC about 9 months ago.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but obviously we have challenges with the sound.
And we use
And what being recommended is that we use one mic.
just one mic.
Because
Okay.
one of them is
Put that
interference.
one with
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but we need to.
So we insourced our SOC about 9 months ago, and automation was mandatory. So back to Eric saying, hey, we're overworked. Yeah, we were overworked. There's no way that I could insource the SOC. Yes, you can insource the SOC, Jim, but you're gonna get limited resources. So automation was just, we had to do it. And in about 6 months, we developed, Python 20 playbooks. 90% of our cybersecurity events are now automated.
Nice.
90%. So to me, automation is, I would say if you're not doing it, you need to do it. And I would also add the reason you need to do this is because bad actors are doing it. So you gotta fight fire with fire.
Yeah, we have a question?
Let's think about this from an automation standpoint. Are you seeing a better rate of return on the automation versus outsourcing it and better quality? So one could have a good argument to insource and automate versus outsource?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in a former company at Conagra Brands, we had actually outsourced nighttime operations, and within 6 months we saw an ROI, and we got rid of 100% of our nighttime operations, right, through automation. So currently with KC, it was more of we got rid of a third party who was a nearshore provider. We were able to hire X number of bodies, but I wanted them to focus on the priorities. So I would say the return on investment was focus and finish on that which matters, and things like, hey, we got a phishing attack. I don't need something else to deal with that. Automated playbooks can say, get right going into the email folders, ripping it out before they get into anyone else's space. So I'd say ROI is twofold. One is, yes, I've seen it from a financial perspective, but certainly from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective. Does that answer your question?
Real quick. Another thing I would just want to mention is that it's a matter of control as well. So if you have in-source and scripting that you can edit and modify, change control, and understand, we all right now, and there's a directive about knowing your software bombs, right? So these are things that you have limited control outsourced, and also that's a vector of, I wouldn't say of attack, but you have to worry about their competency, their data streams. So I always believe, and I know there's overhead associated, but I believe that in-house automation far exceeds anything you can do from an outsourced perspective as risk and control. Miles may vary.
So if you could all hold the microphone the way Eric is, we can hear you great.
Eric's
I know, right? I sent them a 5.
And I think it goes to the question as well as why outsource? And if it's, hey, we don't have enough bodies, right? Or it's a cost reason, then that's where automation has now gotten to the maturity level with some of the tools that are out there, with the skill sets that are out there, with the experiences out there, that while that might have been a good option in the past where we were trying to tackle problems with people and throwing more bodies at it, now you can leverage technology to come in and help automate a lot of those processes.
Yeah, I would just add, and it gets back to the questions asked, we definitely saw a huge uptick in reliability, just massive. So it's definitely value add. Sorry, is there a question there, sir?
Curious, did you hire a different skill set to automate versus those that were automated?
Yeah, great question. I'll say yes and no. The good news is I had Python skills on staff. I needed to augment those a little bit because playbooks are written in Python. Outside of that, no, I did not.
The operators were able to do the automation.
Yeah, absolutely, and actually wrote the playbooks, right? So because they're the ones that are going to have to, because you don't just deploy automation and leave it, right? So we've got our team that are they're validating, right? Trust and verify type thing.
I would also like to add that sometimes we don't need the specific skill set because some of the tools that we have right now is all drag and drop. So if you know the workflow, then you can just drag and drop and then create your automation, right? So there are like SOAR tools, like, orchestrator tools, which can just, you don't need that programming skills to do that for your basic automation. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are any of you using automation to perform your pen test?
So I'll step on my moderator role. No. I have seen some tools and I've started to try and take a look at that. I'm trying to balance that a little bit in my mind with, to me, if I continue to do that, I think it's a good thing, but I also need a resource for someone to be looking at that. And I'm also trying to contemplate what the compliance piece of that is, right? So is that gonna bite me in the butt a little bit later with some regulator? I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, I'll let you guys. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of companies that are starting to do it though, because I am starting to see that to be more of an uptick in services and solutions. Anybody else want to add to that? There's a question.
So one of the challenges we face in our environment, we're a very heterogeneous environment. because we grew through a whole slew of acquisitions in our company. The challenge we faced is predominantly inculcating an automation culture.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how we can make that transition, and particularly how we can incentivize reward people to get there.
I would say the proof is in the pudding, right? So once we deployed and started seeing the results, it was like, okay, I'm a convert. So absolutely, I think as long as you do it, deploy it correctly, and then you can show, metrics driven, qualitative, quantitative. Yeah, I think it's actually pretty easy to make the case if you do it
So
correctly.
baby steps do a few
Baby
things.
steps.
Absolutely.
Get the quick win.
Yeah.
So one of the things that challenges, if you go into, say, a sysadmin and you say, hey, we're going to automate, they may have an inclination of, I'm programming my way out of a job. So what I feel would be a good way to tackle that is to do their annual performance, their smart metrics, and say, we don't want you to be this level. We want you to be the person that is in charge of everything, right? So it's more or less, you stay where you're at doing the mundane rote things that we want to automate, but in doing it, you will always be doing it. And if you do that value prop and ego push, because these are IT guys, right? Maybe. Or CISOs. Anyway, but you do that value prop, that's where they're going to want to automate so they can go on and do more things.
So let me add to it. So that was kind of said earlier, right? I think your project sounds, you're a much bigger company. So I just want to make a comment about the mid tiers, right? For us, right, if I'm looking at automation, I'm actually trying not to, I'm not trying not to get rid of resources. I'm trying to reallocate, right? So for me, and being in a mid tier and being a little bit smaller, I'm trying to look at things that would then allow our team to move on to other aspects or other things that we really probably should be taking a look at, or that we only maybe touch a bait, maybe look at for an hour a week at, right? So I think you have to consider that piece of it, right? And back to the cultural thing, I think it is a cultural thing, along with a lot of other things in business. If you want to drive that and you want to see efficiencies there, maybe get the ball rolling, I do think it's the small wins, right? Whatever you can kind of put a little team together and go do, and show that piece of it. But I don't know that there's always an ROI. There is in some cases and stuff, and I do think in bigger companies where we have bigger organizations and stuff, there is more of an ROI. But I do think there's more about efficiencies, reliability, and reallocation of things that you're doing.
Yeah, but when you say ROI, I have a question for you, Parrish. So you say ROI. There's always an ROI, or law, cost or an ROI. What do you determine is an effective ROI?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
is a good
Metric.
ROI?
Yeah, so I think that for me in my mind, it's more of trying to figure out what that baseline is for us. If I can figure out what maybe, this is where information sharing becomes important in your networks. People that may have already done it. So I'm looking for a baseline. And then I'm looking at, based on our size of company and the risk and where do we want to be, and then I'm trying to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, from there going forward, if I can hit that mark better, then it was successful.
Yeah, but I want to step out again and say,
Yeah.
okay, you got these stakeholders out there, right? And CISOs or CIOs or whoever you are that is asking on your board or in relating with your board to go, okay, we need to automate. What does that look like? So they're going to want to know your perception of what, you got to come back to them and say, here's our plan and here's the ROI and here's the cost, and really outline that specifically.
Yeah, so I can, without naming the client, I can talk about one of the scenarios that they got involved in. So they have 300 manufacturing facilities around the world. Out of that, they hired in one of the system integrators, or I'm sorry, the big four to come in and basically say, hey, we're not going to be able to protect all of these. Not every one of these factories are material to the business if something was to happen. But we want you to go out and do an assessment, tell us which ones that we really need to focus in on from a cybersecurity perspective. Out of those 300 sites, there were 75 that came back and said, look, if something happens here, you're gonna know about it. Like, you're gonna feel it. And so what they initially did was, hey, we need to get an inventory. We need to understand that environment. We need to figure out what's there, what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities that are associated with it. So they went out and hired a third party to go do this, and each site cost them 5 to 6 figures per site. They did it on an annual basis. So we're talking millions of dollars just to build an inventory. When there was some type of new 0-day, something that was of interest that could affect those sites, they had one person that could pull together these 75 different disparate inventories, do the analysis, and the expectation was, hey, you've got a week, 40 hours to do this analysis. And what was it that they were trying to avoid? In some of these sites, I always think safety, right? And hey, what is it gonna cost you if you can't meet those obligations? This particular client of mine, they think in terms of time. If something bad happens in this part of the world, this culture, that is a 10-year setback for us. So that was the justification for them to go out and say, look, we need to find a better, faster, more efficient, and reliable way of getting this data, being able to correlate that data. So I think, you have to kind of take into consideration of what makes your executive tick, what's material to the business, is there a better, more efficient, practical way of going and doing that? And is automation a solution? Even, let's use the word semi-automation.
So on ROIs, one of the things I would challenge is to say, what is your error rate? So if you have metrics related to change control success, there's something that automation, time obviously, but another one is dwell time. I love to do the capture the flag, where you have an incident response team, and that incident response team, you say, I have put a text file on a server, it says get me dot whatever. Starting now, how long is it going to take for you to find that text file? Those scenarios in an automated world, you can say, now we reduce the time it takes to isolate by X, that's a metric, and if you look at dwell time in ransomware, that's significant. Error rating for change controls is another one, but if you do, another thing is compliance, because each one of our markets has a different priority. Is it integrity? Is it confidentiality? Is it availability? On the NERC, on the SCADA devices, availability is everything. And so that's where my priority is there. 911, police, fire, different. Those type of things. So you need to know your industry, know your business. You already have metrics. Just allocate them and look for them. And one last thought, if you can't really truly identify an ROI for it, you probably shouldn't do it. Yeah, move on.
I want to answer just the question maybe slightly differently. So first of all, just so we're clear, gotta do what Eric's doing.
Yeah.
Already?
He turned it off.
Eric, you just turned it off.
I did. It's all about me.
Can you guys hear me on this?
No.
Let's bring in the other one.
You should have slipped him a 5.
Yeah, Eric. So here, I'll speak loudly. So just to qualify what I said earlier, when I insourced my SOC, it cost me $0. Got rid of the nearshore provider. I said, here's how many bodies I need. Can we make that work? No cost. We already had an automation solution that was not being utilized, brought a new solution, wrote playbooks. So it's pretty straightforward. To me, sometimes ROI is qualitative. When our control landscape and the complexity changes every minute of every day, this is pretty straightforward ROI, to be honest, and your board of directors understand that. So to me, it was a pretty easy decision, really.
Can I kind of add to a question for the other panelists? Because you guys are in the role of the CISO. So for maybe somebody who hasn't done this before, they want to get good at it, and maybe they're not going to be able to pull you in, Jim, and say, hey, come help me figure this out. What are your thoughts around bringing in a partner? Like somebody that you work with today, maybe using that as one of the services that you bring in, or do you think that have you had good experiences with that, bad experiences with that? I just kind of look at it from my own perspective. I want to pull somebody in.
You say for automation? Outsourcing automation in?
And even making the justification, the business case, where should I focus in on it? Like if you don't know how to do it, I don't think the answer is just don't do it, right? Or if you don't have the time to do it, is it let me go talk to, pick your partner that has a cybersecurity capability here today of services.
Okay, this is definitely off.
Just when you put up your mouth, talk louder.
Get there. Nope, ain't never happening. So befuddles me is, as a employee, I can go to leadership and say, this is a, imminent, non-recoverable, catastrophic failure, or rapid, unscheduled disassembly. And they're like, well, over-exaggerating, yeah, not so much. But you throw Barry Dunn in, and they say something like, the world's pink. Oh, it's pink. Let's go start changing the world to be pink.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot. Oh, I said a name. An outsourced consultant, we'll say. Yeah. But when it is such that you have the ability, when you outsource these type of things, one, sometimes the solution to getting out of the box is on the outside of the box. So all you see is the problems, the priorities, and the risks from you. Third parties will come in, they'll take it, look at it, and they're going to want to make their money, so they got to find something wrong. And that something wrong may be you got to have to bite the bullet, do something that you know is not a priority, and you know just basically is a waste of time and resource to get to the point where you can implement the third phase of that big, long consulting firm's recommendation.
Yeah, but Eric, you may not have the talent, the point that Andrew is making is.
Well, no, the town is to go out and get it.
Yeah, but with automation right now, I mean, how many of you, listen, seriously, how many of you trust the fact that you have exceptional talent in your organization to be able to even begin the process of automation? How many of you?
I have some talent. But I have some
Okay, so
talent.
what's the weakness? Time?
Time.
Okay, because are you reaching out to partners, like Andrew said? I mean, I am.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. We have a partner, and that partner knows everything, or pretty close to everything that we are trying to work on, and they've done an assessment and validated some things that I've thought we needed to do. And so that's been built into our roadmap and into our budget, right? And as things come up, we do leverage them to have those discussions about where does that fit in the prioritization? What would it take to do that? If I don't have someone on the team that I think could take and lead that, if it's some new area, then I will look to bring someone in for. I will look to bring someone in for that. We've done multiple engagements where that's been the trend. So it's nothing new, at least to our CFO and such. So we actually include in our budget a line item for outside consulting engagements. That it's a bucket, and we use that for whatever prioritization or whatever else is going on. So yeah, we leverage that all the time. We're a smaller team. We're a small IT team, even really in regards. So we have to use that.
Yeah, I'd like to add, we had two scenarios, like I agree with Eric, because one time when we tried to do like threat modeling and do automation on the threat modeling, we tried to bring a partner, but as you said, they had their own set of agenda, and then we tried to automate the stuff, and then it didn't work, right? First of all, it was not a priority what they were looking at, and we had to go through all those steps to get to where the vendor want to be, right? So that was one issue. The other side I would say is that when we had an in-source, our vendor or the partner that we were using, and our internal teams which are using our tool. So when we had that particular partner come in, but it's a inside tool that we use. So we use the services from that company to educate that particular for that tool, right? How to automate the tool in day-to-day use. So without using the outside vendor, right? So if it's a consulting firm, definitely, as you said, it's we have to go through the agenda. But if you already have a tool, it's good to bring in their services to educate our employees on how to automate those things. So we had those two scenarios where we brought in a partner as well as we used in-house services and the vendor that we are working with to provide training. So
Yeah, I just want to, comment on the comments we made a few times. We don't have the time. Seriously, because guess what? 6 months from now, do you think you're going to have more time to do it?
Right.
By implementing automation, you're giving yourself time. So I'm not saying it's going to be hard at first, but it pays dividends. So what I'm saying is go do it. I would also add that, I think Andrew made this point, a lot of, third parties have playbooks pre-written. They may not be perfect, but perfect is the enemy of good enough, right? Maybe they're good enough. So let's start there. The last thing I'll say is let's crowdsource this. You guys are all here today, right? We're here to talk about it. this is a group effort. And I'll say that I would be certainly willing to talk about how we developed our playbooks with anybody that asked. So there's a way to get to the point.
Yep.
Questions.
Yeah, questions. Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I'll come back.
So anytime you automate a business processes, there is a standardization that happens. So in my experience, a couple of challenges I have faced. So whenever you are defining that process, the business wouldn't be aligned. Some will have more steps in that workflow, some will have less steps. And let's say even if we go ahead and get that defined after a painful process and implement it, then the second set of challenges we start facing is since they were not on board in the first phase, they're not going to adopt that business process. So how do you face such challenges and how do you deal with them?
That's
That's
tough.
pretty
Go ahead. That's a tough.
So one of the beautiful things about the public sector is that when you do an incident response plan, disaster recovery, I have the whole entire diverse range of threats, risk tolerances, because, public library internet access is really important, but you know what, if you don't have electricity, it doesn't matter. And so, 2 comments, and for those that let me rephrase the question, make sure I understand it, is basically, how do you have consistency in your processes across diverse business units?
Yeah.
More or less?
Like defining it because it's going to have standardization and people
Yeah.
are not, they have to be consistent, they have to fall in line.
Well, I would say, but do they? And what I mean by this is, if you have a development playbook, right, that is modified such that, then you have to really do some soul searching on that playbook. It's too detailed. So from a cybersecurity perspective, I was doing incident response plans, but then I realized the incident response plans you can't even start to use them. So what I did was create an incident response management policy that says every department will have their own incident response plan. That policy won't change. How they deploy and implement will. So here's the thing: you have your design document, D something. It's your code base. How you do it. 1, we're aligned with Python. Just for a second. I don't care what you do as long as it's Python. You think they can comply? Yeah, right? Okay, good. So you now have a standard and consistency. Now, you keep going layers. At some point, there's this threshold of diversity. Right? We don't know where that's at, and you're going to have to go down to it. Start with I would say, the common denominator, like I did. We all need to make sure this crap works when it's bad day. And then let them drill down. But at some point, you're going to lay here, and that's going to be from a policy to a standard. Now you're looking at SOPs, standard work. So now it's like, I don't give a crap what line number 42 looks like. This is it. You'll use Python. You will do a QA process as a production, and you'll do code scanning. There you go. Your automation will work, and then you can then get more buy-in because you tell them what to do, it won't work, right?
So, any other comment? Okay, you had a question.
So I think it's along the same line of what she just said too, that is there a threshold of when we should say we shouldn't automate? And is there, in your experience, is there steps that you go through and say that, the organization is not ready, the process not ready, there's too much diversity or non-standard that the ROI is not going to be there because there are just too many exceptions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there are certainly instances like that, absolutely. So for example, there's some applications we're looking at automate some steps. Then we took a step back and it's like, well, we're doing app rat in 18 months. We're not going to throw good money after bad. We're not going to go do that. But I would say like across our GBS organization, yeah, they look across the entire organization, they figure out where does it make sense. Where does RPA apply? The good news is from, I'll be parochial, from the cybersecurity perspective, it's my domain, so guess what? I get to make the decision. And it's paid huge dividends. And I would say we're automating about 5 different verticals, if you will, within the cybersecurity team. So it's definitely something I'm very serious about.
Just to follow up on my questions, do you find that a third party who comes in and help you do that readiness assessment tend to work better, or internal assessment works better for you?
For me personally, it's internal assessment. Because no one knows my shop like I do. So if I can't figure out where I need to automate, then maybe my boss needs to look for somebody else.
Well, so I think it's good to start internal, but I think it's good to validate outside. So, because I want to make sure that my team's just not missing anything, because we tend to think inside the box, so to speak, for our organization. But if you've got a strategic partner that has similar clients as you, they sometimes can bring those additional ideas that you just hadn't thought about. So I always try to start internal, go external for validation.
Yeah, I agree as well. It's internal and then go external, and also like how you automate your security or cybersecurity is not how you automate your business process, right? And one of the things, as you asked, like where do you find that you shouldn't automate, right? That will be some like where we had to make a decision is we had some regulatory data, and then the bot going in and trying to get the regulatory data. So we had to make the decision, hey, is it okay for the bot to go in and look at that data, right? Is it accessible to everyone? And we are not monitoring that. So those are some of the areas when you do business process automation that you have to check. Hey, is it okay to automate, or is it more riskier for the regulations, right? So that kind of things that we have to look in when you have different scenarios for automation.
So I do think the cybersecurity profession is like, I would say, YouTube psychiatrists, because I have to create a culture that when somebody clicks on an email and there's something that bad goes on, that they don't think they're going to get fired if they report it, right? You got to make it such that they want to report it. Don't it's celebrate that loss as it would be, Maybe I'm the only one here. Same thing here. Spoiler alert. You will try to automate something and it will go south. Whether the programming goes over budget, whether somebody messes it up, or you're automating something that kind of bing, 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 there you go. You're going to fail. So that stress is over. Fail fast, fail often. I would challenge everybody here to find something mundane. And if you want to start with Outlook rules, or if you want to start with Power Automate, drag and drop, set yourself a challenge. Automate at least one small thing and then build on that success. But if we're looking at these things like, well, I'm going to go pay $300,000 for a university job, sorry. You need somebody to come out here and say, hey, this is where we think you're going to automate. And by the way, since I got paid by the other department, you're going to automate it. Or it's just a cluster. So my point is this. Don't fear failure because you're going to fail. Embrace it, but the more you try, then your statistical average becomes positive, right? If you did only one automation and messed it up, you're at 100% failure rate. If you did 1,000 and you messed up like 10 of them, then you're Edison. I mean, then you're you blame it on.
So I have a question as well for us on the panel, just because I've seen things work in other places, and kind of your thing about having people report spear phishing. Is there ever times of consideration, maybe even making this almost like crowdsourcing across the employees, across the business, to say, make your suggestions for automation and what would be saved, and then basically if you go out and execute that and really recognize those employees to get them in an automation mindset, right? Some way of rewarding them, whether it's through recognition, and then having people putting suggestions to just an automation inbox that's in Outlook, that's going to get reviewed by somebody in the business to say, hey, here is what our employees are saying are happening today, and really take something that makes them actively involved in that and thinking about that.
Well, and Amber, you gotta communicate that up.
If you take this reminded me of when I was at Sabre, they actually had an innovation lab, okay? And it was like a bug bounty, where you had teams, you got a team together, and you were challenged to make something that's going to make the company better or that you could commercialize. Think about that in an automation sense, right?
Yeah.
You say, okay, you got teams of 3, and you've got a week. And in that, you've got to automate, and then they're going to judge the automation at the end of that week, and the winner gets a koozie.
So not specific to automation, it's probably a part of it. So our internal technology team, and we outsource this because we want it done by a third party. We actually do an annual survey, and it's not a quick survey, but we have a separate survey that goes to our executive team, and then we have another survey that goes out to employees. And that actually helps. And based on the questions we ask things about how favorable is the technology, and we ask in certain aspects, and we get a little more specific. But that actually helps, and we present that actually to the technology steering committee and to our board. So it shows, it gives us some baselining and some numbers about how we're doing as a team and areas where we need improvement, right? And so some of that stuff that comes out of there too is, it has to do with like, here are the gaps, right? So some of those gaps could be considered automations, or they could be process improvements, those, various things. But just to put that out there, right, that is something that culturally our technology organization has done, so that we know, are we doing a good job at the end of the day, or are we not, and where can we improve? So
I would say we've done something slightly different, as opposed to crowdsourcing. I have a Tiger team, it's 3 people, by the way, 2 new employees, 1 legacy employee that are going out and looking across the information security. So I have 150 employees looking across the stack to figure out processes, applications, solutions, and what is terribly deficient. And they're coming back to me with recommendations. So their day job, they report to the managers. Their night job is Tiger team, they report to me directly.
Wow.
As I said earlier, we had like a company-wide training, right? So I also attended the training. I also tried to automate something that I did. So the one that I did is that we had to pull out assessments for like what assessments we did on Jira. And I used to like do that report every day, click on that, go download the report every week, right, for the team. So what I did after going to the automation classes is that I automated it. So every week I have like the report in my inbox, which is there, and then I can send to my boss, right? So that was something that I learned, which is like fun. I would say there are so many cases. So for ours, our training was based on business unit. So every, like from the bank side, they try to automate some checks, right? Like, anything that's less than this thing, right? Issue checks, less than $1,000, right? Issue checks. So there's so many places where we can automate that we don't think of. Again, data transfer, right? Like we want to transfer data, which is like in a file to some other place, right? So that was happening, which is a periodic data transfer. We do that. So these are some examples where we can, like, we just there all over. Accounting department is a good one, right? Where they have a lot of Excel sheets and things like that. Then again, finding like, servers which are not patched, right? So you get an inventory. Earlier we had to go to our service now and then pull that report. Now it automatically comes every month, right? So there's so many areas where we can look at. Even if it's such a small thing, I would say, right, go ahead and try it. There'll be some place where you can find an opportunity to automate.
all right, go ahead.
I was curious, in your automation ecosystem, we've been hearing a lot about imperative technology, so your PowerShells, your Pythons, right? I was curious about the breakdown of imperative tech, the declarative, like Terraforms and that kind of thing tends to be more the kind of future facing, and then into your low codes, your no codes, and your RPA. Like what your breakdown is for the panel.
We have more of RPA for the business process automation. Terraform, I would say, mostly not widely used, but it's mostly used for administration. I would say, like, cloud administration and things like that, where we use Terraform. I would say like maybe 10% or something. It's not fully, but I would say 50-60% business automation with UiPath, RPA, and then others are mostly scripts and things like that, right? So that's where our company is.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty close to us as well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know for Armis. Get a call.
We learned to spell it.
Yeah.
There are some things about the city that, first, you're accountable for internal development, budget for external development, and then a very, very low risk tolerance. So we don't automate a lot beyond the PowerShells and the SCCMs, and even Python, very limited to do. So one thing I would say this, if I may, just because these represent leadership within the cybersecurity space and so forth. We all talk about retention, and if you don't know your staff, right, they're not looking at things about what does it do. They're looking at it, what can it do, right? They're inquisitive, they're tenacity. Sometimes they drink down to do with their mother's basement. I'm moving out soon. But my point is, if you challenge them with learning a new code base or fixing a problem, it's a three-dimensional puzzle. That is what rocks their world. That's why they're in this, if they're not in for the money. But let's talk about some other people. Their ability to do the forensic analysis, that's the sexy stuff. So if you can integrate that into their development plan and say, listen, tell you what, guy, you want to learn something new, we're going to teach you Python, go to your YouTube, LinkedIn Learning. They're gonna love it, man. They're gonna. That's there. And then but invest. You got 2 hours a week. We'll let you do that on 2 hours of company time if you want to do things else other times. But I'm just saying that's a good way to keep attention, keep them interested and engaged. Make sure that it's applicable so a third party didn't come in and say something. And another thing is, as we get further and further away from technology, or from manual work, we rely on the technology and AI and all that. It's funny is how many people here, on TikTok, I did not know a fan has a switch that goes back, one way or the other. I said, you don't know this? None of us know how to make a wagon wheel, right? The technology is gone beyond. So how much of this automation are we going to separate ourselves from such that we don't know how to do it to begin with? Because if you can't follow those steps manually, you can't automate it. But once it's automated, you just rely on it to work forever? No. You still have to maintain that expertise in-house and that in-house expertise if the technology fails. The other day, the electricity went out, and I was like, oh, I gotta go call from Atira or whatever it is, and I realized, oh crap, I don't have the internet to get the phone number. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you gotta realize to yourself what that technology automation is gonna do, and you need the talent to support it and do it.
We're starting to wind down here. Any other I just want to make sure. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was cutting in and
No,
out.
you're fine. You're fine.
Sorry, I'll stop.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, the question is that all this is great, but we all like preach the mantra of automation. We all like to worship it. How do you get business stakeholders? And I work mainly for internal business stakeholders. Buying into this, because every time the opposition or the roadblock I get is, hey, this is great, but why is it my project? This is technical debt. You guys should do it on your own. Figure it out on your own. To your point, invest 2 hours of your developer time. How do you sell this to business stakeholders who want time to market? Get this done. I think one of the gentlemen alluded, are we better off 6 months from now? No, but nobody's willing to wait for that 6 months.
We have a ELT or executive leadership team, nothing but services. So you do top down. We're buying in, therefore we're going to do it. I mean, honestly, you've got to work across the executives to say, and the ELT basically, there are certain things.
I am sorry to interrupt. I have executive approval. That's not a problem. It's the managers and the business stakeholders. In the line of facing the line.
I would say if the ELT has directed something, you've got this thing called mid-year and end-of-year reviews.
Yeah.
And it's a requirement to effectively automate. By the way, for me, it was X percentage I had to automate, not optional. So, you hit somebody in their reviews, and all of a sudden it's amazing how things get done. I'm not trying to be draconian, but I mean, that's the reality of things.
Measurable.
I do want to add something. So for those that didn't hear, the question is like, how do you get internal stakeholder buy-in, right? And I look at it like controls, all right? Your backups aren't my problem, they're your problem. So I'm not, it's like you transition a maturity model and culturally to say, I'm here to help you implement your controls so that your stuff doesn't go south quick. So, automation, right? Why are you automating and who is that, racy, right? So if they're the ones automating have no value, they're not the ones who are actually clicking it and doing the cumbersome process, yeah, they're gonna push it back. Maybe that's not the right place to automate. But if your recommendation for security automation is to automate the security of their technology, and you can't sell that to say, listen, I will make sure that we have the following metrics improved, right? Patch management, whatever that may be, on their tech, and it's their problem, then I think you're gonna, exactly, I deal with that all the time. It's like, why am I gonna add steps to my process, ready, shoot, aim, perfect. And I go in, no, wait a minute, you gotta, ready, the only way I can get that done is to say, I'm doing this for you, you're not doing it for me. I don't know if that translates into your business world, but the stakeholders are always gonna push back, hey, look, are you an agile? You're an agile SDLC market where you have iterations and fast to market? Yeah. Try to put that suppository where so you got to put that in where that's not their priority yet.
So we had one other question real quick.
Oh, there's a question back there too.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Quick one.
Yeah.
So I know with AI
One sec, sorry.
automation strategy.
I'm sorry, what?
Is
AI.
AI playing the automation strategy?
It can, but there's a lot of, I think you better be careful with it. Yeah. There's, so AI's been around a long time, actually, right? It just has now kind of gotten,
Mainstream.
yeah, mainstream. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so, oh, sorry. So I think, in fact, I just got came from comments where we had a lot of AI discussions. So I just think you have to be careful and you have to define what you want to do as an organization. We're looking to maybe start polling the business as to what they want to do with AI and being very focused on that and not trying to boil the ocean with it. But yes, I do think that automation can, and a lot of the cyber tools today have some sort of AI baked into them, right? Not everyone understands what they do. And that's some other discussions going on is how do we determine what that is and is it doing it the best way it can?
Yeah, but also, back to the automation issue, is that where the rubber meets the road. So, okay, you plan this out, you have a timeline, right, of the project, right? So what if you meet, if everything changes in 6 months? So, I mean, let's say you have a year project out there, and then all of a sudden, everything changes in 6 months, right? Because of the speed in which AI is coming on board or ML is coming on board. So how do you build that in your process from a project perspective? And still, like Eric said, fail faster or at least recover somewhere in the middle. And how do you pivot? So I know I'm asking a lot, but these are the questions.
But I think that comes down into the planning and considerations of what is it that they're gonna automate, right? And how likely is it that this process is gonna need to be changed or updated? How much time and effort is it gonna take to maintain this part of the automation or Python code or doing updates to that? I don't know if anybody has anything else to add.
All right, let me do one quick. I promised.
I know we talked about the happy path of automation, everything runs automated, everything is successful, but a lot of automated processes have to be monitored. Like, what if something fails in between? Like, what is your level of idempotency? How can you start from the point of failure? For example, a bank issuing refunds, it fails in between, you start doing it again, you have some happy customers who got refunds 2 times. The second thing is, how do we build automation processes that are safely restarted?
Say that second part again?
The second one is, like let's say if an automated process fails for some reason, I think one of the parameters of any automated process should be that you can restart it safely any number of times. And it starts with the point of failure. It doesn't repeat what it's done.
I can, the failure part I can say because we had a process where, we had a process that was running, and it failed because it issued too many commands at one time and it brought down the system, right? So we got an alert saying that, these data transfer, what was happening is not happening. So we had to go back and adjust the data transfer rate because, there are notifications, right? When things don't happen in the business, they report back saying, hey, we didn't get the report, or we have notifications even in the systems to say that, hey, this is failed. So we had to go back and adjust those data transfer rates so that the system doesn't fail. So there are times when it has failed, and there are times when it has it doesn't do the thing that we are supposed to. We program it to. So probably what we do is that go back, adjust the workflow, and then make the adjustments. Whoever is the administrator and the business process, they work together to make that change. So once it's, even after that, you have to monitor that, right? It's a continuous monitoring to see what process has failed, because it also gives status reports, okay, of whether it has failed or success, right? So that comes in, so we can check on that too. Yeah.
So I think to conclude, we can say it's not always possible to test automation at scale.
No. There'll be always failures, and whatever we have tested also sometimes fails. So it's there, yeah.
Okay, I know we're over time and I want to be respectful of other
Yeah.
panels. So thank you to the panel. Thank you for Andrew and your company sponsoring. I'm sure if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure we'll all feel free to talk. But thank you for the questions. I appreciate that. So,